Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Fabric coffee session at Microsoft Fabric Cafe. This is the first one in 2025. Happy New Year! And I hope you enjoyed your vacation, your holidays, wherever you just headed to. And I'm sure it is actually an unusual time for our live sessions. Usually we have it in Saturdays, Saturday morning in Pacific time, but this time because of we have a great speaker today, and we it is not easy to get hold of him. It is that is the reason that we are going live in the midweek. With no wasting time, I'm going to just share my slides. It is the 20th session of Fabric Coffee Session in Microsoft Fabric Cafe, January 7th at 4 p.m. Pacific time. It is Microsoft Learn community. Whatever that you need related to Microsoft and Azure technologies, you can just find in this community. You can just request for the actually supports and use the guidance from the experts and your peers even in this community. So feel free to join any of the learning rooms that you would like by using this tiny URL. And of course, you're gonna join the Microsoft Fabric Cafe if you haven't. It is a community for only for Microsoft Fabric, and it's actually subsections like Power BI and data engineering. As you know, it is a united one, and it is an united actually software in Microsoft that works with different sections of the data industry. And we are actually providing learning and supports to Fabric users in all levels. It is a forum for everyone to learn, share, and grow skills together. Here are our social links, the YouTube channel, Microsoft Fabric Cafe, and you can just watch all the past live sessions and upcoming ones. And in the LinkedIn page, you can just find out uh, the latest updates from our community and Microsoft Learn as well as Microsoft Fabric. And below is the direct link to our learning room in Microsoft community learning rooms. There's a code of conduct in our community. Thank you very much for adhering to that. And as always, we promote the Microsoft Learn challenges. And if there is any, the current challenge at Microsoft Learn is the Ignite edition. It is going to be over in January 10th. Just you can feel free to write for us if you completed that. If you've got your free voucher, it was a limitation on the vouchers for the free vouchers. But yeah, just let us know about your progress in the past year. In December, we had 3 sessions that one of them was canceled because of some technical issues, but those 2 are available in our YouTube channel to just rewatch. And for 2025, with starting in January today at 7th of January, we are starting with Reid. And so let me invite Reid to the stage, and let's see what he's going to have for us. Hey, Reid, how's it going?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you very much. Thank you for being at Microsoft Fabric Cafe. It is a pleasure for us to have you here. And I guess everyone is looking for just like me, just learn from you about Power BI, and let's see what is going on. And there's a comment for you. So excited to see it to present. Been a while, yeah.
I even
Cool.
managed to, just because I know on Restream the guests can't comment directly in there, so I snuck my way into the LinkedIn, so I can at least make some comments in there as well.
Okay, yeah, I see. So actually, we are streaming in LinkedIn and YouTube. So
Mhm.
from anywhere you're connecting, feel free to ask your questions from Reid. And yeah, Reid, if there is anything to mention, feel free. If not, session is yours, and we will just look forward to learning from you. You're gonna share your
Yeah,
screen.
just as yes, absolutely, and you can share it. I'm just gonna do one quick plug because I'm always so eager just to get into talks that like half the time, if I present at conferences and other stuff, I always forget to like, oh, right, I need to actually promote my business just a little bit before I get started. So, just at least a quick 60 seconds. Like most of you who are familiar with me or maybe not, like you probably know me from Havens Consulting. That's a business that I've been running for about 10 years now, which is this one here. So that's been my bread and butter for the last decade. That's where I got started with all the YouTube videos that you watched in Power BI. The only new thing that I just think that I want to try to announce is that I did start a second business this year, uh, technically last year in 2024 with Steve Campbell. So my second endeavor is a new company called Analytic Endeavors, just focusing more on like Fabric, I'd say data platform and other things that are just part of the bigger Microsoft ecosystem, but still swimming in the BI space. So just as a quick mention and a nod. And if you are curious, here's just a link to check out. But that's about the only plug that I want to give is for me, it's kind of cool and exciting. I've never really had a business before with employees and that starting to get to that point. So it's primarily been me as a solo shop for at least a decade. So a fun new venture that I've been going on this year. But coming into the topic of the day today, so I will be talking about like basically how to avoid soloed or siloed data sets. So data silos, it's a term that Microsoft has been using for a long time. But you, to give an example with a number, like if you have a company with 100 reports, you don't want 100 data sets, semantic models. It's going to be a term that will still take at least 2 years for me to probably fully ingrain it in my brain when they switched from the words. But uh, you want to make sure to use shared data sets as much as possible. And a lot of what we'll be talking about that I'll get into just in a minute is going to be what can we do on the models themselves to help curate them to make them more usable and expandable. And we have about maybe 45, 50 minutes, and I most of my sessions can be upwards of like 2 hours, sometimes they can be 30 minutes, so I'll cover a lot of topics. I'm gonna do a mixture of breadth with a little bit of depth, but that's the high level of what we'll be getting into today. Here. There we go. So, and just to kind of recap of what I've been doing, I'll mention a couple of things as part of logistics and then get back into this. So feel free to drop the comments. I have a wide screen over where I monitor everything on the right, and I'll try to make this as interactive as possible. So just rather than hearing myself talk for an hour, so please feel free to ask as much as you'd like. Otherwise, just as that final summary of me, been in the space for about a decade, do a lot of YouTube videos, hence the nickname VizWiz because it's a lot of visualization magic that I do, but I pretty much do everything within Power BI. But I don't want to spend too much time on myself. So uh, broadly speaking, the demos are going to focus are on enhancing the model design, uh, trying to get to one or two things on the things you could do with Tabular Editor, and also if we get time at the end, also what can we do to configure data sets in the service. So I'll try to cover the important ones in each to make sure we talk about each of these three primary topics. Um, but to start the conversation, let's just conceptually understand what do I mean when I say enhancing the model design. So in that case, it's things that are aiming to configure model properties to suit audience needs. So this isn't optimization. This is not tuning. This is enhancement for usability specifically. Like uh, the best model in terms of optimization is going to be the thing that's it's fast, it's small, and it's performant, but it also can be very hard to use for a non-technical user. So there's like overlap sometimes, but there also can be very separate principles in terms of what is usable versus what is simple. And sometimes you need to add a little complexity in the back end to make it easier in the front end. Things like field parameters and extra model objects and stuff. But that's what I want to talk about is that where is that song and dance between these two when it comes to what can we do to try to have a model as well designed as possible, but still usable for someone who can just open it up, connect to it, and make a report out of it. So that's what I mean by model design enhancement. Broadly speaking, that covers things such as like naming, synonyms, using descriptions as well in display folders, but it's all the little things that can simplify that navigation pane. Think of it, kind of like almost a folder organization methodology when it comes to some of that stuff. Like, I'm sure you've probably encountered those SharePoint directories where it's just a nightmare to find a file, and you have like version 1, 1.1, 1.11, and then come across probably companies that have a very good design in terms of how to organize and structure that. That's kind of the thing that we're doing with this when it comes to designing that fields pane that people see. So to that topic, like when we are curating and designing this stuff, uh, oh, and I thought I had my screen shared. So let me go ahead and really quickly throw that
Yeah.
up. I'll
So I didn't want
yes,
to
and hence
interrupt
why
you.
I'm keeping
Yeah, I didn't
you
want to
got
interrupt you, Reid, but yeah,
here we
please
go.
share your screen. So, but uh, just in parentheses, since I know our session was moved a little bit, most
Yep,
of our guys I know are going to rewatch this session from the
sure.
YouTube channel, and I think it is a good opportunity to connect with Reid and under the post wherever that you
Mhm.
feel comfortable to ask your questions afterward. But let me just share your screen and
There
so
we go.
yeah. It's yours.
Perfect.
Here you go.
And to you as well. Again, like feel free to interrupt. And just ask any questions that you have about this as well. Happy to keep it very conversational with you too with this. So just quickly recap what I was talking about. Didn't show too many slides. Discussing enhancing the model design and what enhancing means in this case, and basically those common attributes that I just talked about. So now, what is an audience in this situation? So when we're building to someone, we have three primary things that I consider. We have yourself for the few times that you're building a model and report completely ad hoc. This is where this is the only person you consider, but this I would be cautious of ever truly building something 100% for you because that's how you get it into data silos. So most of the time when a model's being built, you got to consider what other report authors are there. And again, I'll be like highlighting these things later on if we need. I'll have a PDF copy of this. Don't feel the need to take notes on every single thing, and I'm not going to talk about every single bullet, but broadly speaking to these topics as we go along. But it's just important to consider what things would be needed when building to these primary audiences. And then finally, report consumers as well. So, and I would say each of these, especially with me, gets less and less technical. I'm very technical when it comes to building for myself. Most report authors who are like regularly build reports, they are technical. They probably know what DAX is, but they still have less knowledge probably than the model developer. And then finally, the report consumers. What is DAX? I don't know what DAX is. I know what a metric is. I know that I need prior year sales. I don't know the formula for it. Like those are the people that are like know nothing about modeling. Uh, have never heard of a star versus a snowflake schema, and you have to build a lot of times for this if you are enabling self-service reporting in your organization. So that's the audience that I'm going to be talking about a lot in the kind of some of the practices. How can we make the model as simple as humanly possible so those people can understand your fields list, not knowing anything about DAX or anything else? Quick little final recap, and then I'll get into the demo. So in general, when building models, for those of you who may or may not know, we have like a couple of modes, so to speak. I'm using a term that Peter Myers liked to use in his presentations, but the tried and true is the import model, which is built from scratch, imports all the data, sits in the cloud for usage. But okay, after we get to the next ones, and that can just grab from any central source inside of the connector universe with Power Query. Typical model we'd have for that. But in addition to this, as the core thing that we can present design, we also have a live connection, which is the shared data set world. That is like the V2 that we got. V1 of Power BI, we only had import. V2, we had the live connection. But the problem, of course, is if we needed anything added to that, like physical tables, anything that wasn't a measure, we'd have to go back upstream, make a change, and then wait 3 to 6 weeks for them to approve it and make a change to the model. So it was good. We still got most of what we needed, but sometimes it would have something missing that we needed to have for a particular report, like a report scoped item, a special table for a slicer, a disconnected slicer, something like that. But now we also have said hybrid option where we can import cache data to create a composite model. So that is the composite mode, which was the one that came out now a few years ago. The initial name for it is the biggest mouthful of a title I've ever had for Microsoft: Direct Query for Power BI datasets and analysis services. You need to take a breath in that just to say the whole thing. DQFPBIDAAS. It's a very long title. Pretty much the entire community just calls it composite models. But it's where you can take an import and you can do a live connection against it and then add a few pieces on. But you have the best of all the worlds essentially to do this. And I won't mention it, go into too much details here, but I will say that Kurt Bueller, probably one of my favorite bloggers. I can't pick an absolute favorite, or I shouldn't, but over at Data Goblins has a great article on report scoped objects that actually does a really good job breaking down using composite modeling and helping to add all the junk that's needed for one report. You keep that in a composite model in the report. So field parameters, disconnected slicers, measures that are needed for titles. You stick all that in the actual report file with the composite model inside of it, and you keep that core model nice and clean. But it's just good to mention to people that these are three scenarios if you haven't explored them yet. But composite models is my favorite way to split up the report junk. It's needed for everything that I just mentioned and more, and you don't have to clutter your nice, pretty model for that. If we get time at the end, I'll try to do a really quick demo on that as well, just to show you kind of how to split and sticking like titles and field parameters in a local model, so to speak. And that's when you'll have a mixture of like the two tables that are kind of just visible in there. But this is mostly just to highlight the three modes: the import, the live connection, and the composite. All right. I'll skip the questions part for this one. And what I want to do is jump into the demo here and go through a few of these. So what I'm going to do is, again, go into that enhancing or curating the data set. I want to talk about some things in here that will leverage both native features, one or two items that we can potentially use tabular editor with, though the need for that sometimes is getting less and less for certain things such as calculation groups. But I want to show you what we can build in the model here to get it as simple as possible. Go in towards the KISS methodology. I'll be curious to know if anybody wants to spell out what that stands for, but it's an acronym an acronym to imply simplicity. So let me open to start with and talk about a calendar table. So here's one that I really like that goes towards building the better mousetrap, if I could use that term. So on top of just regardless of what model you're building, I'm hoping all of you turn off auto date time. Like I see that on way too often. So just as a quick mention, please have auto date time off in your model if you're ever using it and have a dedicated calendar table. But number two that I want to bring up as a topic of discussion is Microsoft has what I call a dependent date hierarchy. The standard hierarchy that most people build, or that is part of the auto date time, is year, quarter, month, and date. These are isolated levels that do not, outside of the year and date, the two in the middle don't have full context of a period. So meaning, if I was to just simply go to the next level in a hierarchy, this doesn't actually tell me what year this is in. This doesn't tell me what year this month is in. So the only way to have this type of a hierarchy in a visual is you have to technically, to get like the full periods, you have to expand. So at the year level, it looks okay. At the quarter level, I'd still argue it looks decent. But the problem is by the time you get to the month level, it doesn't really look that good anymore. You're concatenating everything to get the right period. I have to have the year and I have to have the quarter and the month to properly get this. I like your version of it, Jeff. It's a politer one. But yes, that's the analogy. But we get the data. It's just not particularly pretty. Now, I'm going to go back to the quarter level, and we have something over here that I call the independent hierarchy. And with a lot of these talks that I do, I have a YouTube video on this because I try to give tips and tricks as much as possible. So you'll find a YouTube video that talks about an independent hierarchy. But if I go to the next level, look at look at how much nicer that looks. So the difference is mine on the right is able to leverage a continuous date axis where this has to use categorical. And that's because on this visual over here on the right, I using the term independent, but that means each of these columns is isolated. So you can name it whatever you want, but I have a column for year. I have a self-contained column for quarter year, which has the full date context in it. And I have a column for month and year, which is a date data type. It is it's just the first of the month, but I formatted it to be like month year, just in terms of the display. But like it has one value per month with a date data type. And because each of these is self-contained, I don't have to use the expand. I can just simply show one column at a time and go to the next level. So the quarter one, it is text of Q2 2024, but then when I go to, and it's displaying categorically. When I go to the month, it actually displays continuously because it's a date data type and it does need to show all the labels. So I think this is such a better slicer to have, a better hierarchy to have in a visual. And I wish it came out of the box, but I highly encourage anybody when building a calendar table to probably have both just in case, because it's good to have what's familiar and then give them what's new. I've had a lot of people when I've only added one, they are a bit more resistant to it. But if I like, I'll just give you both. Okay, that's fine then. And then slowly people might start to use the other one. But that it goes a long way, I think, to using it in the visual and making a better model design and a better visualization. The one caveat I'd say is using the expand breaks it. So just make sure that you turn that off. So in the visual settings, the one and only visual trick that I do is come to properties, header icons, and turn off expand next level. You won't see it in desktop. There's no preview reader mode, but when you publish this with this off, this icon goes away. So they only have options for these three. But that's the better mousetrap that I like to build for this. I'm putting it into the folders in here, and that's another consideration as well too. Is uh, it's very rare that I have a table that is not organized in some capacity with a series of folders for this. At this very base level, what I've done is I've put my hierarchies in one folder. I put my columns in the other another folder. So just as a quick mention, excuse me, of the features, folders can be applied to columns, measures, hierarchies, groups, anything inside of a table. Sadly, the one and only thing you can't put a folder in is the tables themselves, but that's very easily done. It's right over here. If you go to any particular column, you have a display folder in here where you can add it to. And there's no right or wrong method for this. It's just whatever makes sense for you and your users. It's kind of like the SharePoint thing that I was just talking to you about. So many different companies have different methodologies on how to organize. So just end of the day, as long as you're using it, that's better than nothing, and just having some way for it to be easily found. And once it's made, at least once you type it in the first time, then you can just drag and drop. But the first time you need a new folder, you have to make it. I'm going to show you some more advanced tricks with those in a little bit, but uh, I think just to start with, primarily focusing on, as I said, what I consider to be the better hierarchy to be used, and just doing a bit of organization around that. And at a bare minimum, the one thing that every single model should have, full stop, is a calendar table with auto date time turned off. If you are building a shared data set, this isn't, I need a report in 30 minutes. This is a shared data set you're publishing for an organization. Auto date time turned off. And just to show, in case you're not aware of where to disable it, that'd be data load. So globally does it for new files, very specifically new ones, and in the current file is right here as well. So turn off create hidden date tables. So hopefully this is something that some of you can find useful. And otherwise, I will go on to the next thing a little bit as well. So another big one to continue the conversation, I think, around the idea of folder organization is we can take this even a step further. So let me go ahead and open my other calendar file. And this one's just here to show you how well you can use folders to organize and maybe get some ideas percolating a little bit. So I have a calendar table in here with a lot more fields. In this case, I actually have it organized over here. If I can, there we go. So my calendar table is in here, but I even have a specific folder for all of my calendar fields. So anything that is related to standard calendar, I have a separate section for my fiscal flags as well. So whether or not like I want to be able to turn on or off future flags, weekend flags. So one thing that goes a long way, I think, with companies, especially that works with slicers, that can really work well as a split on a visual, is anytime you have like yes no type scenarios that you notice as a pattern, I'd encourage you to create flags on your tables. And I think a lot of people when they first start learning modeling in Power BI, they learn like, oh no, columns are bad, only measures. It is true, but also it depends. So adding a lot of extra columns onto a fact table generally can cause problems a lot more so than dimensional tables. Your calendar table and your dimensional tables are designed to be wide. And it's not uncommon for a dimensional table to easily end up with 20, 30, 40 columns. That's fine. If you have folder organizations for this, it's not going to end up, with a really long list. Like all of these in a single list, that's a lot to have to sort through. But once you start to put them into that folder organization, it's not too hard to find something that you need to. So uh, I'm generally very liberal with adding flags, things that make it very easy for somebody to quickly flip on or off a set of logic that they want to check for something in those. So whenever able to, feel free to add those. I find that they add a lot of good usage for that. Um, and then the last thing that I'll mention is again, I think the calendar tables are a great thing to have. Is the idea of something called offsets, which I call this time intelligence for dummies. I am by no means the first person to invent offsets. They've been used, I'm sure, for a long time. I don't even know what the earliest date of them is, but well before I was probably even in the space, and probably when I was back in grade school. But they have a very nice use for being able to do relative filtering. So if I needed to have a measure to return prior year, I could use the offset and like calculate sales where date offset equals -1 or is less than or equal to -1. That's all the data up to the prior year or before. So these, once you explain to someone how these work, they don't have to learn functions. They don't have to learn date add, parallel period. Year to date's a little trickier, but if they just need a particular period, they don't have to use a bunch of extra DAX functions. So those report users who don't even know what DAX is, they just know that there's Excel formulas in Power BI and they're doing ad hoc reporting. I find that offsets are very useful for them because it makes sense once you explain this. So a year offset of 0 in this case, and this is the file is a few years old now, but in this case, at the time it was year 2023, so that's to the current year. If I filtered to a month offset of 0, that would be to the current month. Day offset, every row has a different number because each of these is a single day. So if I wanted a rolling 7 days value, I can add this as a filter on a visual and a measure to, less than or equal to 0, greater than or equal to -6. And I have now a rolling 7-day period. So these simplify relative date logic a lot for people who don't want to take a DAX class and they want to do some basic calendar functions. So I make sure that every calendar table that I have has this. Um, I have a couple of YouTube videos and I have this file on my website as well available if you want to go grab that. But overall, it just simplifies the experience a lot. And the goal again is to curate the model experience when you're creating shared data sets. How can I make it as simplified as possible for people with no experience on any advanced modeling or calculation, especially with DAX? And one last little thing that I'll just mention. So this is a new practice that I did years ago. I used to call my measures table DAX. Again, most people don't know what that means. They don't understand the language. So like you can use any term you want. This could be calculations. This could be metrics. You can't call it measures. That won't work because it's a reserved string, because there is technically a measures table in the model, but like metrics would work. You could call it underscore measures, whatever works for you. I usually use metrics, but give it a name to imply these are your calculations, your math, the things that are going to work towards that. But same thing with like naming the Kimball method. Yes, that works in SQL, but no, you should not name things using the Kimball methodology in a model for business users because they don't understand the Kimball methodology of naming it. This is not a technical model. This is supposed to be a model for less technical savvy people. All right, let's see. And I'm going to close these two, go to my other file, continue the conversation. Here we are. Okay. Um, Continuing on curating the experience a little bit. So one thing that I recommend in general is to discourage the use of columns to aggregate, encourage the use of measures. So, yes, technically you can come to say your sales table and put revenue somewhere where you can like aggregate it and use that individual, but we don't want to do that. So, I'm assuming most of you already know this, but like at a bare minimum, make sure you hide pretty much your fact tables and your keys. Those should be hidden from the report experience. The only thing left should be things such as visible categorical values. So category, not category ID, unless that's needed for a visual. So keep the things behind the curtain that should be behind there. Only things visible that need to be. But continuing on that, you're trying to put horse blinders on for people to use the fields that they should, not see the fields that they will never need to use. So I consider that along the idea of like you have developer objects and report user objects. Developer or model objects are the things that are needed for the modeling. Maybe there are tables and relationships needed for row level security, stuff that is needed in the backend but will never be used in a report or in a on global report. So that's all either hidden or obfuscated in some capacity. Now, with that in mind, um, there is something that we can now do inside of Power BI Desktop. We used to need tabular editor for this, but I would encourage you to discourage implicit measures. So that is something that's found. You go to the model view and go over to model. You click semantic model. You have options in here to do a few settings. Now, if you have ever at any point added one or more calculation groups, it already turns this off. Primarily because calculation groups don't work against an implicit measure. Now, you might be wondering what is explicit versus implicit measures. So the difference is an implicit measure is if I did not have a calculation group already in here, if I was to go to the sales table and then on a visual in the values well, I took revenue and I added it onto a visual specifically to sum it, to create the line on this chart or something else. Like right here, this is an implicit measure. Now, if you already have one in a visual, turning off the ability to use them doesn't go a bit. Now, what I'm not allowed to do is if I got rid of this, notice that I can't add it in anymore. Like it will not let me put it in to the y-axis. So that is an implicit measure. It is automatically using the DAX engine to sum mid, max, all this other stuff. And I generally don't want my report users to leverage that. So instead of the column, they should be using the curated sales measure. They should be using the time until like it's all the stuff that is in your DAX or metrics folder. Just for sake of consistency, I'll put that newer name in there. So that's what this feature does is without a calculation group, you would come and turn this on, but because calc groups would error or break on implicit measures, they turn this off automatically because these things do not work for those scenarios, and hence the reason that it's included as a combo package whenever you add one of those. But that's one encouragement to you is to turn these off, force your users into the scenarios that they should be using. So you have your um, measures versus columns when it comes to aggregations to encourage for that. Hierarchies, like very much so when you have something that is that needs to organize things in a logical order in terms of levels, make sure to make those whenever possible in your folders. whether or not it's a calendar hierarchy. One little technique that I recommend is if you don't want these to be sorted alphabetically and you're not using folders, a little trick that I do is some people use underscores. I put a period, which then sorts it all the way up there at the top. So we have that one. And then the last one that I'll say in here is on the idea of folder organization. So I'm going to come over to here. There we go. So let me go one second. I'm going to go and I'll open this file. Start with this one. I want to show the problem, so I'm just going to go ahead and walk through a couple of techniques, just so you actually can see the practice of this being put in place. Mhm. Okay, so let's just do this. One moment. I just want to reset it. There we go. All right. So we have measures that are unorganized. So I've showed you how to add it to one folder, but there's two advanced techniques that you could do with this. So there is an option to multi-folder, and there's an option to subfolder. So as one example, let me show you like a subfolder option. So if I was to just like do folder A, there we go. And let's go ahead and add YOY into here. There we are. So folder A, this might just be time intelligence. Maybe I don't want my year-over-year sales at the same level. So these, instead, if I do a backslash, folder B. So that will create a subfolder. And the nice thing about this too is these are also sorted alphanumerically. So if you want to ensure that that's at the top, that period does the same thing. But the thing that I find particularly cool is let's assume this calculation was sales minus budget. I'm just titling it to give you an example. Should that be in a folder for sales or should that be in a folder for budget? Like, where would people expect to find this? Well, like it could be like not like Marie Antoinette. You can have your cake and eat it too. In this case, let's say that I want it in sales, but again, I also want this in budget. A semicolon budget puts it in both. So very nice option for this. It does not copy the calculation. It consider this like a shortcut. So if I come here, I take sales and budget, put it on the page. Notice that it added it from both. So I can find it in either of them. But there is only one calculation. If I change the name on one, it changes the name on both. So it shortcuts it visually in both sections. But I find that to be quite useful on the having the ability to put it as many times as you need to in as many locations. And it's not limited to two. I can, uh, bud or sales underscore one. However many times you need to, organize it. You have to type in the string to get it, but otherwise it can be subfoldered, multifoldered, subfoldered and multifoldered, anything that you'd want to do to your heart's content. So like sales subfolder and then also budget subfolder. So now it's in a subfolder in budget and a subfolder in sales. This one has to be typed in. You can't drag and drop it multiple times, otherwise it just moves it. But I think it's a nice way to, again, very thoroughly organize your model when it comes to some of this stuff. And ensuring that for some of these practices that we try to keep this as simple as possible, as well organized as possible. One last mention in here, and then I want to talk about tabular editor, and then a little bit of some online configurations as well too. So one thing that I really like a lot when possible is the ability to use like a calculation group. Um, Again, one of the newer techniques that I've done these days is I often will put a period to make sure that they're sorted at top and call them like calc group with like a hyphen of what it is, like time intelligence and uh, things that can really help people understand how this works is I'll get into like what the calculation items in here are. But if somebody's like, what is this? What does this mean? Like I see the words. What do the words mean to me? use descriptions on these. So like a calculation group, you provides pocket repeatable uh, calcs, blah, blah, whatever you want to type into here. This will then become a tooltip when you publish this and explain to people how to use it. So every time I do a field parameter, if I have a flag column that has advanced logic, I will explain in English or simple language as much as possible what is being done in there. So it like, oh, that's what that does. And then I open um, the table and inside of there, like, oh, okay, yes, and like this column does that. So descriptions are your friend. Nowadays, we with some of the versions of Copilot, I know we have the measure descriptions that can be automatically generated, but a shared model should have a good handful of descriptions in your fields to explain what things are being done. Goes a long way. So I'll encourage you to use that. But I love calculation groups. The ability to have your pocketable month, quarter to date, year to date. That's the most common ones, but they go a long way to saving people the need to one your model to have 1,000 measures potentially, and have some reasonable logic when necessary. But very much when you are using calc groups and field parameters, please make a description to explain those, because that is a very foreign concept and a very unique Power BI concept when you have those. So just make sure that it's explained well for that. All right. Yes, another thing that I wanted to mention in here. So we have a user security table. It is needed to filter the model. There is a way to bury this very deep underground if you need to. Make sure it's well documented that it has been hidden this way if you do this. But there is a way using tabular editor to sweep something deep under the rug. And the reason I'm saying is like sometimes hiding it is not always enough. Is yes, I don't see my user security table on here, but if I'm writing a measure, let's try to zoom in a bit. There you go. Let's just say some. It still shows up in my IntelliSense. There is no hide from IntelliSense option. Anybody's listening from Microsoft, I'll continue to say it would be really nice to be able to have hide from IntelliSense as a secondary option in a field setting, but because it can still clutter up the self-service measure writing experience, which some people do, I would like to keep these fields as clean as possible in general, if I could. So when it comes to that, like one thing that we could do if we really want to bury this, we can go to Tabular Editor. You can do this in Tabular Editor 2 or 3, so either the free or the paid version. Waiting for it to open. And I apologize for being a little sniffly. I'm just recovering from a cold. And oh, here we go. All right. So at the table level, you have an option. Now, this is technically, as they call it, an experimental feature. All that means is that it is not officially supported by Microsoft documentation. This is a feature that I'll take to my grave as saying, like, it is a perfectly fine thing to apply. Nothing will ever break. This will not cause any problems in the service. But officially, like, if there ever is like a problem with this, 1 in a billion years, Microsoft would not support this. But because there's a lot of other experimental features that actually can cause many more problems. So it's an unsupported modeling operation. Better said to use unsupported, not experimental. Swap the word around. So that is the thing you have to check on, and you get a bunch of other options that turn on for your tables. This is the easiest, lightest one to do. There's many more advanced stuff you can do with that, but this unlocks one particular toggle. So I'm going to go to my user security table. If I scroll down here, mhm. Where are you? Extended properties. Where was it? Private. There it is. Yeah, so there is an option called private. So a Boolean value that specifies to whether to hide a table from the client. So the client is Power BI Desktop. So if I turn this to on, that will hide it. So the the auto date time tables, they have this turned on. So when auto date time is on, you get the little hierarchy in your main table. There are actually a whole bunch of hidden auto-generated tables in the model with this set to private. That is actually what this feature gets used for. But if I turn this to on, it will disappear from my model. Logic will still be there. Role of a security will still get applied to it. But from the client, Power BI Desktop, this table is poof, completely gone. So the only place to ever see it is inside of Tabular Editor connecting to this. And that could be at the model in desktop. That could be in a model in the Fabric service, but you won't see this anymore in desktop. So I'm going to set this to true. I'm going to close and save. And we don't see it anymore. So it's gone. And again, all the logic is still going to work on this. If you had used the columns in a filter, those would still be working. If you would use a measure from this table, so nothing in the table is gone other than it's just completely hidden, front end and back end, not in IntelliSense, not anything else. So just completely gets in the back of that. So for the rare occasions where you really need something to be swept under the rug, this does a decent job of that. See a question from Jeff. Let's see. With Fabric objects, should the close be done outside of Power BI report to avoid duplications of metrics across multiple reports? If you could repeat the question. Oh, well, yeah, if you could repeat the one above. I see dark mode, but yeah, I'm not sure I'm understanding the question about avoiding duplication of metrics across multiple reports. It might be forest for the trees where I'm just misreading it, but yeah, if you could just rephrase it once, then I'll answer that again. But yeah, that's at least the private option for that, and use it sparingly. But I think it's a nice little feature that really does help you kind of shuffle things under the rug if you need to clean up the model, especially if you're trying to make that simple golden data set for that. All right, so we're at 47. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to talk a little bit as I continue to monitor the chat about service data sets and what to do once they're published to the service. So this will just be discussion from slides for sake of time. But I do want to hit on a couple of notes of things that we can do once we publish our data sets to the cloud. So continuing on the idea of wanting to share and distribute these, it's not enough to just publish a model to the service. We want to be aware of endorsement and discovery. So data sets can be either endorsed or discoverable, and there are important differences between the two of them. So promoted just kind of is, I describe it as like the noisy kid in the back of the class. Like it's the one who's jumping up and down, like saying, pick me. So there's no validation. There's nothing to say the model is good or high quality. It's only a status of really just saying that, hey, you should consider looking at me. Maybe I have some information useful for you. So it just highlights content. Now, any owner or member with right permissions can promote content in a workspace. So a lot of people can do that. Now, on top of that, you have Make Discoverable, which allows users who don't have access to the data to find it. So they'll see it in the data hub in Power BI. And then on top of that, they have the option to like request access. So the data set or workspace owner will get a notification saying, Mary or Stephen would like to request access. So it just helps them find it if you want to give an option for the broader organization to find something that they haven't already been shared with, if you have a big enough organization for that. Now, in parallel with this, what we have is something called certified data sets. Now, this is something that has checks and balances done to it. Only authorized users can certify content which has been assigned by your Power BI administrator. And to Jeff, your question, if you are actually making shared data sets, at a minimum, I would suggest promoting it, if not actually certifying it. Certifying especially will, it gives it an actual literal badge, and it makes it a lot more trustable and reliable. And it forces you to come up for your company an audit or checks and balances to ensure that it has met those requirements to be the best of the best in the organization for this stuff. If you're a small company of like 15 people, maybe you don't need this, but if you're of any larger size for an org, these go a long way, I think, to ensuring quality and getting people to find it, especially for the fact that like in Power BI, you're going and connecting to a semantic model, you have a whole section of endorsed by your org that is in here. So if you just have a ton of models and like which one am I supposed to use and where and all this other stuff, you have this nice clean filtered list of endorsed or certified that you can go and find. So it even has a special menu for all that stuff. So that's why I encourage that stuff to be um, leveraged when you have the option for it. Last but not least, the dataset image. In this section at least. If you are going to promote or certify, giving an image and branding a little bit can also help too, just to give it the color of your marketing team. If it's a marketing report or your finance or anything else. If you have an icon or a logo that fits the branch or the section of it, or something that just again helps it stand out a little bit for the organization when you have that, use or leverage those when possible. All right. So I'll do a quick little thing. Let me pull up my Power BI here because I also do want to leave usually try to leave a couple minutes for questions as well. But let me pop this up, and I wanted to show where some of these settings are in case you ever need to find them. Let me just log in quick. Come on. All right. And 34. Right. There you go. I'm going to show you the data hub and where you'd find these settings, and also where you can go to add people to certify. So first and foremost, in the One Lake hub, you have all of your items in here. And again, that the fact that you have endorsed items that can be separately set up in here in that filter. So it goes to place them here with any of those certifications, and also says when and where they were certified and by whom as well too. So the one thing that I'd say is like the downside of like the new One Lake catalog is the old data hub actually used to have the logos. Now we just get the icons, but they still have the data images in there. It's just not seen in the newer interfaces if you actually have One Lake versus the older Power BI one. But let me just go to a workspace and let's see. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go to my golden data set settings. Because in part of it is it's hard to find stuff in Fabric, so I just want to help you understand where to put it. So important one is making sure that you have a description. So when they're in uh, the One Like hub, they will see the semantic model description in here, which will explain to them what the report might be telling you, what data is contained within, if there's any questions around that. They have the semantic model image at the bottom, but uh, yeah, it's nowhere in the Power BI experience anymore. It looks like the last places that it's probably going to show is apps such as Teams and others. But it's funny is it's getting less and less exposure. So the image, while applicable sometimes, isn't used nearly as much as it used to be. But the big thing around here is under endorsement and discovery. So that's where, as I mentioned, you can either promote it, you can certify it. So there is a new option that is for master data. And again, like that's something that needs to be set up in the portal, in the admin portal, better said. That's a new labeling that's more for Fabric items. So generally, like lake houses, databases, warehouses in Fabric will get that designation. But all of these do help categorize and seal of approval stamp the stuff that you're the items that you are making in the Fabric or Power BI workspace with these things. Looks like I see a question. Fabric is a metric feature for standardization. Does it make it more sense to use Fabric than measures in Power BI reports? Oh, yeah. So like so metrics is a whole different thing. Like that's goals. So Microsoft really likes to name things that are already heavily reserved. I would say that myself and a lot of other MVPs were very annoyed uh, that they use metrics. You know, I'm not the marketing and research team that goes into that. I personally would have picked a different name for that because I think metrics is a great name to describe measures in a model, but that is the name of that. They're separate things. So no, I wouldn't replace metrics with DAX measures. to your question. But let's take one final look in the portal so we can see where the certification is. Certification. There we are. So this is where you'd come in and you would say like specific security groups, and then you could assign any security group in your organization to be the people who get permissions to actually certify. Most of the time, you're going to want to limit it to a few number of people when you do this stuff. But that is where you'd find this information. But I just wanted to do a quick recap and show that online. To close out, let's do a couple of, here we are, a couple of links. So let me see if I can copy and then formatting. There we are. I guess it pasted as text, but these are the links that you see in front of you there. QR code will take you to the main page. If you like the content, I would highly encourage you to check out the YouTube channel here. I also recently just started. There we are. A second YouTube channel, also with my other business analytic endeavors, which is this one. And there we go. So two links and resources for you to go check out if you want. And for the few of you who might have actually been tuning in today, or watching later, if you'd like to, if you ended up watching this and you got this far, congrats. So you get a chance to enter for a blog sign up raffle. So for people who watch this stuff, what that does is it enters you into a hat, signs you up for the blog, put your name in a hat, and then I say I'll wait a month to draw this out, and the name that I draw from this will be will get 30 minutes of consulting time with me, basically. So you get like a half an hour help desk call. So you can chat about Power BI. You can ask me about a desk problem, get general advice on something, but you essentially get some consulting time with me to help you out on anything you might need to, or just talk gab if you want to. So that'll be the final slide that I'll show here. I will also again mention like if anybody needs it, I can provide the PDF to this later on as well. But yeah, for those watching now or later, thanks for tuning in for this, and appreciate everyone for hanging out with me at least.
Cool. Thank you very much, Reid. That was awesome. So if guys, if there's any question, feel free to add it to the comments. I enjoyed a lot actually. Uh, Although it was somehow advanced topic in Power BI. So Reid, what is your recommendation for someone who wants to start this journey with Power BI? Maybe we have some audiences who are not in that level to encounter with the endorsements or some sort of of the data sets and actually semantic models. What is your recommendation? How do you guide them to start with the Power BI?
So if you're just getting started with like basic modeling, I would say a lot of the Learn documents that Microsoft has works really well for like modeling best practices. And I'm like the Microsoft Learn, and I'm trying to get there's a YouTube video that I did a live stream on, and let me see if I can find it. It was really good. Let's see, model. There's a specific link that I might be able to grab that did it. Like it was a best practice on everything modeling. There we go. Let's see if I can find it. Modeling. Yeah, here we go.
You can just put the link in the chat. I will show it here.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Ekisui. Yes, this is the link. Perfect. He's the one of the program managers from Japan. Actually, I did a live stream with him
Also,
late last year, and there's the link in the chat.
cool. So yeah, here you go. If you would like to just start with this modeling stuff in Power BI, thank you very much. There is a comment here from Ensure that if we able to get the copy of slides and access the session later. For session later, of course, it is going to be available immediately after this session on our YouTube channel. Feel free to rewatch it there if you missed any part of that, or you want to just rewatch it. I know it was advanced one. You have to just jump into that specific actually section. But for the slides, Reid can comment on that.
Mhm. Yep. I'll just give you a copy of the PDF, and you can share it as needed.
Awesome. And there was one question from my side. I'm not sure if it was answered or not. It was related to, can the display folder or description field dynamically in your semantic model?
Okay, here we go. Can the display folder or description be filled? So today there's no like f of x button or anything with that. There is you have to have like the higher SKUs with it, but there is a chat GBT like button that's in Power BI desktop that uses Copilot essentially to fill it in. But otherwise it's yeah, there's people have used APIs and other stuff, but the only automatic fill-in button requires like the F64 SKU or something like really high to actually get one of those. I'm hoping it comes down at some point. So yes, technically there is. You just need a very high fabric SKU to do it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's kind of a manual entry. But I'm sure if you Google like this, there are some other videos and blogs that talk about how to do all that in Power BI and like leverage ChatGPT, connect to APIs. But you have to kind of build it yourself to do one of those.
Okay. Awesome. So if there's no more question, we can, I think, share one riddle with audiences and see who's going to be our winner for 50% off on Microsoft exam vouchers. I'm gonna just share the riddle that we have got. Actually, it was designed by Reid. So yeah, feel free to answer that in the chat. I shape how you see the data, organizing it like no one could. Rows and columns I control. Without me, analysis is misunderstood. What am I?
Yeah, I would just read it right. I said she had a shake rows and columns of control without me. Oh yeah. For the riddle from earlier, yes. And you give people a chance, like so how does it get answered by the people, the ones that I gave to you?
Yep.
So I better say like is something for them to answer or for me to answer?
No, for yeah, sorry for confusion. Yeah, it is something for attendees to answer, right? Yeah, actually, we usually have the riddles as part of the slides, but for today, we have it as a comment here.
Okay, nice. All right, anything else before we sign out?
Nothing else. I think we're good. I don't see any more question or concerns. Thank you very much, Reid. I haven't received any answer for this riddle so far. So yeah, we can just reveal the answer, or and yeah,
Just have people comment on it on LinkedIn.
nothing came through.
Okay.
That's fine. It is the answer, a Power BI data model. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Reid, and thank you very much for all attendees. And if you missed the session, feel free to rewatch it on YouTube channel and let us know if you have any question with that regard. Of course, you can just ping Reid on LinkedIn if you have any question underneath of the post, actually the actual post. And I'm gonna just share something quickly here. For our next session will be an 18 Saturday morning in Pacific time. And for the last session in January, unfortunately the speaker is not available, so we will just sort out about the session, and we may have a workshop there. And thanks for attending. Stay tuned for the updates from Microsoft Fabric Cafe and Microsoft Fabric, as well as Microsoft Learn. And feel free to join our learning room. And just don't forget to finish your Microsoft challenge. Thank you very much, Reid, once again. And yeah, if you want to add anything, feel free to add it. If not, we can just wrap it up.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for hosting.
Cool. Have a good one. Cheers. Bye bye.
You too. Have a good night.